I've lived 1,000 lives. I've piloted 1,000 souls. I've killed and fought at night just for another role.
This is the Happy Jacks RPG podcast, a roundtable discussion that's a mix of friendship, humor, unbridled enthusiasm, and tabletop RPG topics sent in from around the world.
Just for another role.
Season 35, episode 4 of the Happy Jacks RPG podcast. My name is Kimmy.
My name is Sam Dunewald.
I'm Kadave.
In today's episode, Spats from Earth asks for advice from a GM returning to gaming after 20 years. Eric from New Jersey is struggling with writer's block. And from the archive 2018, Jen asks what system to run for a pair of non-gamers. Also, share with us. We've been asking for specific emails. So share with us, how did you get into tabletop RPGs? What did you play? And if you'd like to contribute a question or story to the show, you can email us this and how you got into TTRPGs at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com, or you can post to the mailbag channel of the Discord. Announcements. We will be at OrcCon 2025 at the LAX Hilton, February 14th through the 17th. I'll be there. Dave will be there. Sam might be there. Vixie will be there. There we go.
Oh,
There's Vixie.
oh my God!
Surprise.
Where did she come from?
And, I'm fine. It's fine. I've done this before. I will also, we'll also be running games if you want to sign up. I'll be running Virgins and Vixens. Dave is going to be running stuff.
If I come, I'm gonna have some pickup LARPs.
Yeah.
Dig it. I've got The Walking Dead on Friday and Electric State on Saturday.
Perfect.
Nice.
And then maybe my own thing at Games on Demand.
Yeah. Games on
Yes.
demand on and off the whole time.
Running some stuff at Games on Demand.
Yeah, we're very excited to have you there.
Yay.
And yes, definitely hugs because we miss you now that you're far away.
I know.
Yep. And I will also be at Gamma Expo the weekend after Strategicon. So if you happen to be there, come say hi. We can do a meeting and network and such things in the gaming industry like we do. I do that stuff. It's good. I'm good at it. It's fine. Okay. Anyway, I'm not. I suck
He's
at
really
it.
good at it, don't people?
I'm good at hanging out with people, and that's pretty much why I'm going. All right. Our indie designer of the month is sitting here at the table with us.
It's me. Sam Dunewald. Here I am.
Yes. So welcome. Last week we talked about I don't know if it's the game you're talking about right now. So why don't you introduce the game that you are releasing on itch this week?
Right. So I just released this game called We Three Shall Meet Again.
Okay, it's not the one.
Probably not what you talked
No.
about because it was not public before Wednesday or something. This is a 3-player asynchronous journaling game. So the premise is you are 3 witches and you're in a little coven and you have been cursed to share one body. And so on Monday, Kimmy gets to live the day, and on Tuesday, Sam gets to live the day, and on Wednesday, I'm so sorry, I forgot your name already. Dave, incredible. Dave gets to live out the day. And then we circle back to Kimmy. And so we're sitting here, we're trying to break our curse, we're gonna research stuff. Great. We're researching stuff, and then we're leaving each other passive-aggressive post-it notes and stuff.
I love it.
So yeah, it's very interesting in format. I am sure every time I say no one's ever done this before, there's always 100 games that have done it before, right?
Yeah.
But
I was gonna say there's one called Everyone is John that's similar. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
like
well-
where you don't put angry sticky notes to yourself. I think
Totally.
I love that.
I've
So-
played, and everyone is John. It's everyone's playing one character, and Bluebeard's Bride is like that too. And this is a little more you're all separate characters, and it's more the form factor that I feel is
Yeah.
pretty unique, where it feels like playing a solo game or maybe an epistolary game, but you're also with 3 people, and that feels very different from the normal solo experience.
Yeah.
And I think it's very, very fun. Maybe exploring fantasy cool stuff, or falling in love with the cute guy in town, or being plural, and all those things are in the game, and I find that cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sounds like fun.
Also, just a big fan of Macbeth and the whole
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
I rocked it as Lady Macbeth in the Riverside High School production of Macbeth. I was amazing, and just and as a high schooler, as we are, always perfect in every performance.
Yeah.
So, why did you think that particular, I'm guessing scene, like that part of that, like why did that speak to you, and like why did you think that had to become something to play in and experience?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those ideas that just sort of like appeared fully formed in my head of like, what if you had 3 people sharing a body and did witches, because there's 3 witches or whatever.
Yeah.
But to me, I'm disabled. I have a complicated relationship with my body at times, and I found it really fun I like taking that and abstracting it. And to me, this game is really about that. It's somehow both a metaphor for living with shitty roommates and also for like having a body that doesn't work the way you want it to, and that is sort of outside your control in certain ways. I sort of imagined immediately what would happen if you were in this situation and you just like woke up in someone else's bed because there's 2 other people had lived 2 days since you were last awake, and like what would happen? What if you woke up in a ditch? What would happen? And in the meantime, you're like being a witch and like trying to go talk to the trees, and like the fairies are trying to take over your house, or like whatever the heck is going on. You're sort of making up these problems for each other. But I find that it's got that Exquisite Corpse, right? The old game of like, maybe I start a sentence and then you tell the next one, or the artwork version, right, where I draw the head and then I fold it over, and you draw the torso and I fold it over, and then Dave draws the feet. And
which would be a disaster.
Yeah,
I'm just
exactly.
saying.
And doing that with a story, I think that ends up being really fascinating, because you end up with something that doesn't feel like any other kind of story, because it is so patchwork in its nature.
Yeah.
And I think RPGs in general, like something that happens at the end of most sessions is you debrief, you talk about what happened, and it's only in that moment where you sort of like finalize the story of the session that you played. You're sort of in the middle of it, like anything could happen, we can still retcon, all that kind of stuff. But then at the end, it's like, this is what happens today. And being able to do that on the scale of like, okay, we meet, we set everything up, and then we go off and we play our separate ways, and 6 months later come back and do that with a whole 6 months worth of like content, and none of us know exactly what happened at all in that 6 months. It's just like a very cool thing that I have not had in another game experience.
That's fantastic. I love that so much.
Thank you.
It makes me think of like a TTRPG Gartic phone, almost.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Gartic phone is like it's basically that, but with art, where you all draw like pictures.
Yeah. That's the Exquisite Corpse is the name for that in my mind. At least what I grew up with for that.
Yeah. That's amazing. And so how do the mechanics work with that? Is it folded pieces of paper? Like
Yeah. No, it's so I mean, I can't imagine playing this game in a format other than like on Discord or like with a shared Google Slides document or something.
Yeah.
But essentially, there's like you are given on your day, you wake up and you have received a prompt from the previous player. And the prompt is usually in the form of like, here are 3 things that happened today. Like choose 2 of them, and those 2 things happened today. And then you also get to choose one of like 4 things that you can do during the day, and those things are like research how to break the curse that we are under, and cast a magical spell, do a magic ritual, or go acquire a new special item, like whether that's we need to fix the roof because it rained a lot, or whether that's like we need the still beating heart of an antelope in order to like cast the spell that we've researched.
Yeah.
Or finally, you can take some time for yourself. Just take a bath, go for a walk, do whatever you want with the day. So
Self-care witch.
Yeah, the self-care witch. Exactly.
2 hard-working witches.
Yeah.
They're like trying to figure out the curse. And one every time is like, yoga.
That's why Bad Roommates is right there in the tagline for the game, right? Like that's a really common experience for what happens when people play this. And so you choose one of those 4 things, and then you write a journal entry, and maybe that's like chicken scratch notes, or maybe that's like a 100,000 word essay or whatever, like whatever the thing is that you are comfortable with, that sort of consolidates in your mind what are the two things you took from the prompt, what is the thing that you did today, like you tell the story of your day, that's your journal entry for the day, and then you get to leave a little note. You can only leave a note that's 13 words long for the next person. So communication is limited.
Yeah.
And then you step out of being a witch and back into yourself, and you write them 3 things that might happen the next day, and then they get to choose 2 of those, and around it goes.
Nice.
Yeah, and the game comes with like 10 research results. So when you're trying to research to break the curse, there's like a canon answer for how you do that. And so you're slowly making progress on that and encountering other rituals that do various complicating things, and also maybe some random encounters, as it were, that happen as you're doing your research. And those things are like secret. They're like hidden in a special PDF, and so you open up the secret PDF and pour through it when you do your research results. And other than that, so that's a pretty tight framework, but it's also very flexible. It's very like natural language. There's not like rolling dice. There's not that kind of thing. It's just like writing for each other.
I love that it's 13 words you can leave. I just like the
Yeah.
It's a great little detail.
Yeah.
Nice.
Right? Yeah.
Very cool. Awesome. And how open is it to like the witches? Like can you make a self-care witch kit? Is it
Totally
kind of whatever you
yeah.
make? Okay.
So there's a whole opening framework. So you do this like opening gathering. So you do a session. It's like a session 0 essentially together. And part of that process, there aren't, early in the process, I was going to be like, there's playbooks, right? There's like the town witch, and like all their stuff is like this, and then there's the forest witch, and all their stuff is like this. And now it's like a bunch of different unconnected questions. So it's which of us is youngest, middleest, and oldest? Which of us favors the town, the forest, and dark magic? And which of us, I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but there's a number of questions like this where there's sort of 3 things that you distribute.
That's awesome.
And then everyone gets to make a neighbor, that's the term for NPC in this, where that is somehow related to their witch, right? So the village witch probably is making someone in town, like maybe you make the baker, and we have some kind of established relationship with the baker, and the forest witch is making the 10,000-year-old oak tree at the start of the forest, or at the heart of the forest. And the magic witch is responsible for making whatever entity you pissed off, who's cursed you, to be in this body together. And then there's also a round of questions about what's in the cottage, because you're living in some, and whose body are you trapped in? So you establish some questions about like, which of the 3 of you's body are we in, and what is that body like, and which house do we live in, and what is that cottage like? And there's a little bit of an inventory system for the cottage going on too. And yeah, that's sort of the setup.
That's so cool.
Very flexible.
Yeah, I love the 3 options for the questions. That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Right.
It's really fun to be like, okay, they're like pretty limited pick lists, right? There's 3 of them and everyone has to have one. But because there's like 10 of these, you're really mixing and matching. There's a lot of flexibility in terms of like, what is your witch like? And you sort of get to know them pretty quickly over the course of creation. Yeah.
I like that it leans so much into, like, there was a point in my life where I was like, and I have a lot of friends who are very into like Wicca and things like that, and like the Maiden Mother Crone, like the symbolism of the 3.
Yep.
I love that that's like embedded in a very cool and respectful way that also is so flexible and lets you build stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. No problem. I'm excited because like I didn't know what game you were going to talk about when you came in. You're like, oh, I'm releasing anything in itch-stitching. I go, cool. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, love it.
I'm really excited. This is breaking news right here. So I have this podcast, Dice Exploder. Kimmy has been on it.
Never heard of it. Never talked about it except for last week and a bunch of other times.
Yeah. So Dice Exploder is a show where every episode, me and a co-host, maybe more than one co-host, break down one mechanic every episode. Go really, really deep on the design of that one thing. And I love this show. I'm very proud of this show. I just I stopped recording an episode of this show and then came here to record this episode, right? So we're still in the middle of it. But something I'm interested in doing is exploring other formats for podcasting and what Dice Exploder could look like in the future. And one of the things that I want to do is record a little like actual play. I'm doing big air quotes for this Witches game, because I think that like playing this game, but just like having everyone know in advance that we are also writing the script for an audio drama, and then like being able to just go afterwards and record these journal entries is going to be really cool. So that's something I'm hoping that I get to do this year as well.
Yeah.
Oh man, if you want inspiration, so there's a podcast that has a similar kind of setup.
Oh yeah.
Your game
Please.
called the Magnus Archives.
Oh yeah, I'm very familiar with the Magnus Archives.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I immediately thought of. I'm in the
Yeah.
process of listening to it now because I actually am going to be running that game.
Oh yeah.
Exciting.
Nice.
I've made a game for them.
Yeah.
So
My husband and I were gonna do a Happy Jacks thing like that. We started playing, I forget what it's called, but it's like a one of you's off at war, like romance, like writing back and forth love letters and
Euphigenia.
yeah, basically.
Epistolary
Yeah.
is the fun word.
Yeah.
Yes.
The $10 word for
The $10 word. Very good.
for
Thank
a
you for
letter
sharing.
writing game.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we started it, and it was just one of those things with like a kid and stuff. We couldn't keep it up, but we were like all excited. We were gonna like write the whole thing and play it, and then like read it like
Yeah.
a melodrama and at some point. And there was a bunch of people who were angry in the Discord, and we were like, yeah, we were very optimistic about having a toddler and also completing this project.
I will say that's a problem over the course of the pandemic and lockdown, I played a lot of epistolary letter writing games with friends, and I really loved them. But it was a consistent problem, and the biggest problem with this Witches game is what happens when someone gets busy. Because if Kimmy and I are playing an epistolary game and you get kind of busy for it, then the game's kind of over, and that's fine, and that's like what happens in real correspondence, right? But if like Kimmy and Dave and I are playing and Kimmy drops out, then Dave and I are over here like, well, what are we gonna do? Like, gotta do something.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I ever quite
like-
cracked.
Maybe the dark monster thing got one of them.
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly. So
yes.
that is actually what I ended up writing in the book.
Oh,
It's like, this is,
yeah.
if you
That's so
can't
funny.
make it one week, then like just go out of order and like leave it as it's a beautiful gift you're giving to the fellow players, the mystery of what the heck happened to you.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Now I want to play it, and I want someone to flake out. And I'm like,
Yeah.
we get to make that up.
Yeah.
I like I have tried several journaling type games just on my own to see what they're about.
Yeah.
And I can't do it. I am never motivated to do a solo game because every time I sit down to do something, I'm like, cool, all right. And I get into it for 10 minutes. And then immediately my brain ramps up into, well, I should be doing 18 other things right now.
Yeah.
I don't know about this, but like mixing a journaling game in a way that I'm playing with other people means that I then have committed that time and I'm ready to do it.
It feels like socializing, even though you're doing it asynchronously.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a problem that I've been thinking about a lot with solo games, because there's so many journaling solo games, and there's a community of people who really love that and for whom it works really well, and I love that for them. And I've played some of those and I like them just fine, but I also have found that the solo games out there that have a different verb for the player other than journal have been much more fun and effective and like easy for me to start playing. Like there's one, Void 1680 AM is about being a sort of Welcome to Night Vale style radio DJ late at night, and instead of you don't do any journaling, you just make a playlist for whatever you're playing on the radio, and then every couple of songs you like come in and record yourself doing like a station break, and
Nice.
maybe you take a caller in between that you sort of randomly generate with cards, and so it's just done after the fact. Like you have this playlist left over, and that's cool to then like go back and be able to listen to the playlist. But it feels a lot easier to be able to sit down and do it, because the act of journaling for me leads to the same place it does for you, I think, Dave.
Yeah. There's so much pressure in life to just like get things done and be productive always, especially when you have as many hobbies as we do.
Totally.
And when you should be writing other things, like your game that you kickstarted. And no pressure, not to be specific or anything. But yeah, there's like those things where, okay, I'm going to do something creative for a few minutes. And then I always like end up feeling guilty that I'm not doing something else.
Yeah.
But I like that, like something where it's like a quick recording or something like that. I feel like that's something you can even just do on your phone, like you know, on your break or something like that. And at times where you can grab moments that you wouldn't be doing something else anyway.
Totally.
That's cool.
I've also been like with Void in particular, you can then share your playlist with other people. Like they have a whole Discord where you can go put your playlist. And like Ken Lowry, who designed the game, every Sunday night just broadcasts a user submitted like playthrough of the game. And like there's 20 people that get on and listen. And that's really another cool way, I think, to take what is primarily a solo experience and make it feel like a collaborative, collective community kind of experience.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a good mimic of what it's actually supposed to be mimicking, like a solo DJ out in the middle of nowhere. Because I remember, like, I used to do a bunch of road trips and stuff, and my family did that. And we would, like, and before the days of, like, we didn't have, I'm going to age myself here. We didn't have CD players and stuff. So it was like, unless you had something on tape, which is a very limited amount of things you could have, you listened to whatever was like playing in the middle of nowhere between California and Oklahoma for a very long time. Yeah. And sometimes it was these weird random radio stations, and it was always really interesting.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm very excited about that. So yeah, check that out. So if you go to sdunwald.itch.io, you can find all of Sam's games, including We Three Shall Meet Again. And yeah, it's up there right now. And we were looking at it. And I feel like Sam was like, "Oh God, don't avert your eyes!" Like,
no, please look at me, and look at the game.
Yeah,
look, honestly, if you play this game, I want to hear about it. Yeah. I want to know how it went. Send me your journal entries. Send me your cool photos of the like. There's a shared bulletin board that you put together. Take a screenshot of that Google Slides bulletin board that you put together and DM it to me. I want to see it.
Yes, and you can find Sam at diceexploder.com on Blue Sky. And you can also join the Dice Exploder has a great Discord as well. So you can join there and find him there. Yeah, so there's lots of places to message him. And yeah, definitely. That's cool. I love like the arts and crafty components.
Yeah.
Yes.
Speaks to my heart as an arty crafter person. All right. So yes, that's our amazing indie designer of the month this month. So shall we move on to mailbag number 1? Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Let's do it.
It was a rhetorical question, friends. We have to move on to mailbag number 1 at some point. So
Well, I just said sure in an acknowledgement
I was
way.
expecting more enthusiasm, Dave. That's fine.
Hell yeah!
There we
Let's
go.
go.
Oh yeah, mailbag.
Get this train out the station. Come on, Dave. You want to read us the thing? Or...
I asked for this. All right. Someone read it because I've been talking a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. Dave, you read it.
I'm up. Okay. That's all I was waiting for was where are we going? That's all.
Okay. I'm sorry. Usually
What if we just like took another minute and vamped for a little bit longer?
I mean, we
keep
can,
this train
we
in the
do.
station a little bit longer, you know? What if I'm motion sick?
We'll just talk about whatever. It's fine.
This is our brand, so just talking about whatever. And gaming sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Like 80% of the time.
Dear Happy Jacks, I just recently started to listen to the podcast and joined the Discord. Welcome.
Yay!
I have started my return to TTRPGs after more than a 20-year hiatus.
Whoa.
Wow, nice. There are so many new concepts and surprises over the 20 years. I would be surprised if you have not answered a similar question in the past. Other than learning the particular system you plan on GMing, what 3 things would you recommend a returning GM to work on over a 1-year span to supercharge their rusty skills and develop new skills that were not commonplace 20 years ago? Are there any RPGs that you'd recommend to experience that are particularly good examples of modern game design? Thanks for all the help. Spats from Earth.
I love that. Usually people are like, from Los Angeles, from Seattle, from Earth.
From Earth.
Allegedly.
Better than the
suspicious.
alternative.
Totally not suspicious. Totally not some random alien.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
from Earth.
They only get back in radio range every 20 years.
Oh my
Sure.
God.
All right. So
God.
that's interesting. Like, first, I think we need to kind of like break down like what even is like what has been the change in GMing in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Well, I think culturally, if maybe there's been like a shift into safety within gaming for sure. There's a lot more stress on like always have a session zero, always fill out your like consent sheets, all of that stuff. Just to make sure that games are safe and fun for everybody. Whereas before there wasn't as much of that. Like if I'm thinking about like my first tabletop game like 20 years ago, that guy GM for 20 people didn't do a single
Oh.
safety thing, and it was just a not the best experience. And I feel like that has changed
Yeah.
since like as gaming has evolved. So I think that's a big like that's a big shift I think within the community as well.
I think it's important to talk about with that too. A lot of people come back and I think encounter that sort of culture of talking about safety more explicitly and are sort of like, yeah, I mean, I'm just playing with my friends at home. It's totally fine. And I think that that is to some extent true. Like safety works really differently in public playing with strangers than when playing at home with your friends. But I think that like leaning into that culture of like setting expectations, making sure you're all on the same page, making sure you have similar goals for play, even if you're not picking up a tool like the X card or Lines and Fails, just like having more of that conversation around setting expectations and making sure everyone here, you know, loves each other and wants to play together and is happy together is like a really good way to approach it in a home
And
game.
that brings up another point in my head because you're right, like especially when it comes to setting expectations, play styles have
Mhm.
definitely changed in the last 20 years. We have like I've seen like I call them the grok nerds. There's a lot of people that are like more combat focused because they're from like the older games tend to be more combat focused. They tend to be more war games, at least some of the popular ones from like 20 years ago. Versus now we have, I feel like more attention has been given because I feel like they've always existed. I'm not gonna like say they never existed, but I feel like the focus has shifted more to narrative focused games, games that are more aware of the story, that are more about exploring the story proper versus always getting into a combat or always getting an encounter or always doing that dungeon crawl.
I-
And I think like I say that to say like play styles themselves, like you might have a more combat focused play style, but are then trying to enter a narrative focused game, and then that style doesn't work, you know. So thinking about that, keeping that in mind, and figuring out what works best for you at your table as a new GM. Like, are you going to be a more combat focused GM? Is that an expectation you need to set? Do you want to try narrative? Is that another expectation you need to set?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I think dialing in a little bit more on that, it's not even just like combat focused. I think it's more like table culture and at least like the stereotypical norm back in the day. No offense, I was playing 20 years ago too, so it's us together from Earth. But it was more like the adversarial GM. Like it was like the GM versus the players. Where
Right.
now it's, even if you are playing a game that's still very heavily combat, it's still more of a collaborative experience. So it's not like the GM is sitting there trying to kill you. You're all trying to create a cool story together, even if you are, you know, using the minis and doing the whole combat thing. Because I think you can have really like interesting games, and sometimes I am in the mood for just a dungeon crawl and I want to just beat the crap out of things. And you can have cool moments in games like that that are very story driven and things like that. It's not necessarily what they're designed to do, but I think the GM or DM versus the players is something that's very much been kind of passed over now and is no longer what people strive for generally in their gaming anymore. No?
No, I mean, I agree with you.
Mhm.
I also think that the gaming sphere has turned from sort of one big bubble into 1,000 little bubbles streaming from a kid in a stroller at
It's
Disneyland.
exactly what I was
Right?
going to say too.
Like,
Yeah.
it is now, instead of just sort of being like okay, you know what you're in for when you sit down to play an RPG. Now there's so many universes of RPGs out there that you're like flabbergasted with choice. You know, you're just like, and while I totally agree with you, in many of those bubbles, I think there's still tons of bubbles out there where there's GMs setting out to murder people.
Well,
Like, and
And
that's
tons of combat.
and that's what they do. That's what they get into the game to play, and that's what they're there for. And that's fine. Like, if everybody at the table knows what you're signed up for, thumbs up, have a good time, you know. But I think my biggest piece of advice is don't let the vast amount of data out there intimidate you. Like, just pick something that seems cool, give it a try.
Totally.
Especially because
Yeah.
the price of most games has dropped so dramatically. Like, back in the day, it was like, okay, cool, I'm going to go buy an RPG book, and it's $35. And you're like, okay. Now they're 50 for some games, but
I
you know
was
what I'm
gonna
saying?
say,
They're $35 still, but like inflation has happened, so
Right,
that's
yeah.
funny.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
They're
like,
the equivalent of $35 in this day and age.
Like, my
you
heart
buy
is
that
hurting
book
as
and you're
someone who's gonna
like,
be
that's
publishing a
that's my budget for my gaming this
Yeah.
month, and
Mhm.
that's what I'm gonna pick up. Cool. I mean, also over time, luckily in my life, I have got to a place where my budget for gaming has gotten bigger. So,
From middle school, Dave? Really?
right, yeah, exactly. So I'm not scraping together money and going to buy the next Rifts book as it comes out.
Riffs.
In 1993. I don't know, yeah. 20 years ago was not long. Be quiet.
I
Oh my God. I was just going to build on that point. I think
Yeah.
also being willing to expand your horizons beyond the games that we know and love, because everybody knows Dungeons and Dragons, everybody knows Pathfinder, but being willing to try other systems outside of like those is also something that you might enjoy. Just because it's so different, it gives you the opportunity to learn a new rule set, to explore that and see if that's something that you like. In that same vein of like trying things within like the last 20 years,
For
um,
sure.
so things of that nature, like that would be definitely something that you would want to give a shot, like give like words, what are words that you can try as you um move back into the TTRPG space as a GM. But like my personal belief is also that like being able to play in a bunch of different systems just truly benefits you, because it gives you the chance to like explore and try things and figure out like what you like best, what you GM best, where you shine. You know what I mean?
Totally. It's very much like cooking. So,
Yes.
like, the more different cuisines you try, some of them
Mhm.
you may dislike intensely, but it will still make you a better cook for having tried things and maybe found some new spices and things you like from this recipe and things you like from this recipe. And I say this to someone who never actually cooks, but I use that metaphor quite often.
My brand on Dice Exploder is specific examples. So I want to like co-sign basically everything y'all have been saying about like try some stuff out, but I want to like give some recommendations.
Excellent.
Because I think also a lot of these spheres of game have really good one-shot games out there that make trying a new system and a new kind of play a lot easier than it was a while ago when the expectation was still really long-form campaigns. So I would underline for story games, maybe For the Queen, which Kimmy and I love. I know other people here probably love
Talked about
too.
it on
I
our
also
episode.
love it.
Exactly. We talked about it on Dice Exploder. But For the Queen is a game in which the whole mechanics for the game are just there's no GM. You go around the table. There's a deck of cards, and on your turn you draw a card, and it has a question for you about your character and their relationship to the central queen figure in the game, and you answer that question, and then maybe people ask you follow-up questions, maybe not, and then we move on to the next person. And it can be really quick. It's really easy. I think that it's not as easy to play as I have sometimes led it to believe in the past. Like, I do think that there is a skill involved in like learning how to answer prompts well, but I think that that is a skill that is really worth developing as you're like coming into the hobby at this point. And also, it's a short game, and probably it'll be really fun. Especially if you have some experience role playing.
Yeah.
Another one I'd call out is Escape from Dino Island,
Yes.
which I think is a lovely Powered by the Apocalypse game. So it has a standard DM, a Dino Master, who runs the Jurassic Park style little adventure for you. I think my games of Escape from Dino Island tend to be 2 sessions long, like 2 sessions of 3 hours each. It's very Jurassic Park, but it lays out, I think, really well the philosophy and the specifics of how to play a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games while being an easy way to dip your toe in.
If you're at Strategicon, Escape from Dino Island will be at the As Seen on Happy Jack's booth in the
Ooh,
dealer room. So,
love to hear that.
as long as Ray from MythWorks brings his copies of it. So it depends. We'll see what he brings, but yeah, it should be.
Awesome. Shout out to Sam Roberts, my friend who's a co-designer on that game. And the last one I wanted to bring up is Mouse Ritter. So, you were talking a little bit about the, let's go into dungeons and just like kill some shit kind of style of play. I think in the past 10, 20 years, a lot of the sort of classic D&D and like dungeon delving style of play has evolved, to become more self-aware of what it always was in some case, to be a lot more about exploration than about combat. And the let's go into an interesting space and have players ask the DM questions about what's going on here, and the DM provides cryptic answers, and you have that kind of conversation without even having to like roll a lot of dice. And Mouse Ritter in particular is a game in which you play as little mice with your swords and your shields and your adventuring stuff. Maybe your shield is like a button, right? That has fallen off or whatever.
And a needle for a sword.
Yeah, exactly.
I love Mouse Ritter so much. It's such a
Very
good
cute. And it has these like wonderful little like tearaway character sheets that have little square cardboard inventory things you can write on, and so lovely.
Yeah.
It's such a physically cool way. Like I've never had fun doing inventory in a game before Mouse Ritter, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Oh my
promise
God.
Sam doesn't know this, but we actually, if you check out What About Bob's, it's our Mouse Ritter AP that's happening right now.
Yeah.
And I think we're in episode like 4.
Yeah.
Maybe you did know. I
Awesome.
don't know.
I didn't know that.
Okay.
No, that's great.
I was like, you said it. I was like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah, but I think it's
Such a great game.
it's such a great game. It's really in that classic like adventuring style of play. I think it hits in that classic style of play. There's supposed to be this sense that like characters are disposable and the world is very scary.
Yeah.
And I think when you turn characters from like magical powerful elves into mice running away from like owls and shit, like that feeling gets really emphasized too, in a way that I think leads to a better understanding intuitively of how that play style has kind of evolved in the past 20 years too.
Yeah.
So those are my concrete game recommendations.
I think Mouse Ritter really hits for those of us who grew up with a lot of like animated shows of that, who are like, The Rescuers Down Under and
American
Fievel
Tail.
and American Tail.
Redwall.
All those things. And I think like all of us who grew up with these little mice, like with their little, like you said, your button shields and all the things, like doing things that they should not be able to do as mice, but it's like a little bit like more realistic version of that, because it's like, oh, this is how it will probably actually turn out for a mouse in that situation. So have a backup character idea.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, the book even tells you like your mouse could die at any point in time, so always have like a backup ready to go.
Nothing communicates that better than literally the game coming with a tearaway pad of character sheets, right? It's like you're gonna go through these little guys, like
whoa.
yeah.
You get so attached though, and you're just like,
Yeah.
Not my mouse.
Yeah.
I should shout out also, my friend Victor Lane wrote an adventure for Mouse Ritter called The Lonely Oak that I think is just one of the best little adventure sites I've ever seen for any game. Really, I ran it at the Story Games meetup here in Burbank a few months ago, and it was this really emotionally powerful experience in that too, even in this game that is supposed, in theory, less about emotions. So Mouse Ritter is just so good.
Our one shot was so cute. They had to save their cheese from a bunch of rats.
Yeah.
It was very much like the mice versus the rats. It was so fun. But like you get emotionally invested in these mice, okay?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so try a lot of systems. Pay attention to like safety at your table, and kind of like just make sure everyone is prepared ahead of time and has the same play style and vibe. So what's another? Are those main things?
I would 100% recommend find, like you mentioned, a game meetup or a local game convention or whatever. Like that's an easy outlet for you to get out there and be a player in some games and see what you might be into, right? Like especially if you're just you're stepping out of your DeLorean from 2005. Which is weird.
Say,
But
I was actually going to build on that. I think the important thing here too is also find a good gaming group, like or gaming.
Yeah.
Make sure that they like that because I've been listening to Crispy's Tavern a lot lately, and a lot of what he does is RPG horror stories, and a lot of these people are like, well, I went online to a forum and had a horrific experience, or I went to a
Yeah.
gaming store and also had a horrific experience. So I think it's important to evaluate, also use discernment when you're choosing which gaming group to attend,
So
so that you don't end up on Crispy's writing about your RPG horror story.
yeah. So much of the advice here has been like, try some stuff, figure out what you like, and then play with people who like the same thing as you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think that's kind of been like, I mean, because we used to get a lot more horror stories than we do now. I like to think it's because of our amazing advice. We've just solved all the problems. But really, I think people are just like, I don't want to send them our bad news right now.
Yeah.
Like nobody wants to send more bad into the universe right now. But
I totally want it.
yeah,
I totally want it.
want.
They actually,
Send us
there
I would
aren't
love to
RPG
know.
horror stories anymore. No, they're
No,
they're all done.
We fixed them.
That's
But so many of them are based on like having people who all want to play different games at the same table, and no matter what, somebody ends up pissed off, and it ends up as drama and not cool. So yes, I think all of that's very good advice. Dave, did you have more to say? I feel like we kind of like jumped on it.
No, to the recommendation list, I would also throw in, because I'm everybody knows where I live. Try out one of the Free League games. You can find they have so many licensed properties. It's easy to find gamers that can connect with the source material, that are familiar with it, like Alien or Blade Runner or whatever.
Lord of the Rings.
Or their Lord of the Rings One Ring game. And you can try out their mechanics, see what you like about it, but it can also be a good way to step into some of the newer ways to think about games, because it's sort of a half step.
Yeah.
It's between the classic, here's my character class and here's my stuff, and the very narrative freeform stuff that's out there now.
Yeah. It's
and-
also sometimes. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it just lives in that liminal space between eras,
Yeah.
I guess.
It's also a little bit easier to kind of, if it's something you're really familiar with, if you're really familiar with the world of Alien or Lord of the Rings and Tolkien, whatever it is, it's that much less stuff you have to worry about learning. So you can focus on like the game and like the mechanics of it and how do you play this. Not about just learning the system, but like kind of adapting to some of the new ways that games are played, because that's always my recommendation when people are like, how do I introduce people to a new game? Like, find something that they're already familiar with, so there's less of a barrier to entry, so it's something they're familiar with, and so they only have to learn how to play it rather than what do you mean I have to learn all about Star Trek in addition to learning all the mechanics of this game?
Right.
So yeah, it's also easier to get people to try something if something they're already a fan of.
Yeah. They're willing to do the work of learning all the dice mechanics because they want to get to the Star Trek that they already love.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, like, that's the benefit of having a big IP. You can dream.
Can I, at the risk of completely overwhelming the person who has asked this question, who I'm
Okay.
sure we've already overwhelmed, but
Yes.
another thing they asked about was specific skills. And I have a couple of skills at playing games that I have had my eye on in the past 6 months. And I think that these are almost like looking forward into the future even more for all of us, maybe, not just someone who's returning back to the hobby. But I'm really interested in playing to lift, which I think is more classic and people maybe understand a little bit better by now intuitively, which is the idea of like, if I go into the game less focused on like what I want to have happen and more focused on like, what does Kimmy want and how can I provide that for her? And like, what does Dave want and how can I make Dave's life interesting? If we're all doing that, then I'm helping everyone else, but also I have a whole table of people who are doing that for me, and we all get lifted up together. And I think that tends to be a really great mindset to bring into a game to create the best possible experience in these much more collaborative setups.
Yeah, I love that's a very like succinct way of saying something that I think like I think that's something we all kind of are meaning when we
Yes.
talk about like story games and collaboration, but I love that's a very specific way of putting it that's very clear. I love that.
Shout out to the Nordic LARP blog. I can't remember the author who wrote the original Playing to Lift blog post, but yeah, it's a great term. And the other one I want to throw out there is framing scenes and cutting scenes. So basically starting and ending scenes as a unit.
Yeah.
This is something I've been editing a Dungeons and Dragons actual play recently, and it's made me very hyper aware of how Dungeons and Dragons is played.
Yeah.
And I think we are all very familiar with Dungeons and Dragons. Like there's the moment where it's like, okay, we're going to leave town and we're going to go to the dungeon. But
Right.
first, is there anything anyone wants to do in town? Anyone? Well, maybe I'll go to the shop. Maybe we have to like figure. Okay, we're finally gonna get out of town after spending a session talking to the shopkeeper, even though no one really wanted to buy anything. And now, like, okay, what do people talk about along the road? What are we doing before we get to the dungeon? And like, I'm telling you, you can just say, now you're standing outside the dungeon. Like, you don't have to mess around with that kind of stuff and like find something to do in there. I think that like cutting forward, and also like similarly, oh, okay, it seems like you're done talking to the shopkeeper. So now you're outside of the dungeon. You can end the one scene really concisely too. And that, I think there's something really interesting and kind of wonderful about the way D&D is played, in that like you're always playing in real time. You're never skipping forward. There is something that comes from that. But in a lot of the story games that I think the Happy Jacks community is much more interested in, I think that there's a lot to be gained from start the thing that you want to be happening, put people there, and also once you have reached the climax of that thing, you can just be like, yeah, and then some more stuff happens and we move on. Like you can just end the thing. Cutting away, another thing with cutting scenes I think is really fun is the like, oh no, I've been thrown into the pit. Cut to what's going on with Kimmy, and we can cut back to me in the pit later, right? Like, Jason Morningstar wrote a really interesting blog post recently about cutting scenes specifically, and when and where and how you can do it. And I just think that those are some skills that I think everyone in this community could really focus on.
Yeah,
I do think that is a skill, for sure. I will
Definitely.
also say, my big thing has always been flexibility and adaptability, because you absolutely never, ever, ever assume that you know how your players are going to react to anything you throw at them. They will always do the exact opposite of what you think they're going to do, or something completely different. So, and usually it's funny because I immediately think of a couple instances where this happened to me, but my thing is the way that I plan games when I'm going to run them as a GM. I call it the Doctor Who method, because the terminology I use is from Doctor Who. But I have certain things that are called fixed points in time, which is like the greater like adventure. And if they can hit those fixed points in time, we'll move on. We'll move through that adventure, but they don't have to necessarily. Like, they can do whatever they want, and I'll just weave it into the story at large, and we'll still get from point A to point B. We just might take like a little bit of a spiral like throughout the game. And I feel like that's a very effective way to GM, because you are also weaving in elements of backstory and bringing in like their story elements and making it about them, while still pushing them forward, and pushing the narrative forward. Because I do think when you operate in like a sandbox method, or with more of an open method, what tends to happen is you wind up getting stuck a lot more. You end up stalling out because you get stuck in the sand, if you know what I mean. And I think it's important to have some kind of forward momentum. So always having those tools there and being able to work with whatever is thrown at you to continue to push the story forward. It does not have to be railroading. I don't want to conflate those two things. It's much more keeping the momentum of the story, so that you can get to so that it kind of comes to a satisfying close, whether that's a cliffhanger, whether it's open-ended, so that you feel like you've told a story at the end of the game, if that makes sense.
Totally.
So
when I do what Sam was describing, and I always describe it as soap opera pacing, where it's like you get to like the most important thing. Oh, you just fell in the pit. Oh no. We cut to this, because they also the thing that most people don't say when you're GMing, it gives you a few minutes to think about what would be the most interesting move with the pit.
Totally.
Like if you sit there, then you might not come up with the most interesting thing in that moment, or the player might react in a way that doesn't make the most interesting story. Where if you cut away, you give like what we teachers call thinking time, and then it's like, okay, they're having a conversation, and while this other group is having a conversation, well, where could they be? They wandered into the woods, then that gives everyone, it builds up the drama with the people in this scene. It builds up the drama with the person in the pit. And it gives you person in the pit time to think about what they want to do as a character. It gives you time to think of some cool, genius thing with the pit. And then you cut back to it and everyone's like, wow,
Yeah.
how did you come up with that? Like instantaneously, you're like, I didn't. You all just talked about other stuff for like 20 minutes. And then well, maybe not 20 minutes, but like 10 minutes. And then we cut back. So it's definitely a very interesting and a nearly invisible stalling technique for you as a GM.
That reminds me of another technique that I think has emerged in the past 20 years, which is as the omniscient adversarial GM has sort of fallen out of fashion more. I think it has become much more couth to, as GM or as anyone at the table, to simply ask, I don't know what happens. What do you think happens next? That like, if you are ever stuck as to like, what do you think I should do? Or who do you think is behind this door? Or what would be something that cool that could happen here?
Yeah.
You can just ask and like someone at the table will have a great idea and you can run with that.
Yeah. Dave did this amazingly in our Starscape game. Like there was like this, he was playing this alien from this race that was like giant murder ants who like just ate everything. And like there was like a conspiracy theorist and who like thought that rabbit hair was like the thing against, and I just like randomly said it, and then I would turn to Dave. I'm like, is it true? And Dave like got to decide, and it became this cool thing where the reason that like the Fijians had never attacked Earth because there were rabbits on Earth, and that was like
our initial scouts landed in a rural area and encountered rabbits, and then had anaphylaxis, and then jumped back on the ship and left and said, no, the most toxic place in the universe.
Yeah. Which I never would have come up with. I literally said rabbits because I'm allergic to rabbits. So that's why the conspiracy theorists like, oh, they're allergic to, like, my brain only thought of things I was allergic to, which is a lot of things, honestly. So it's like, rabbits. And then Dave came up with this giant backstory about Earth. And, like, it was just the coolest thing. So, like, 900% of the time, if you throw it to your players, they will come up with something more interesting than you will come up with.
I think that's the beauty of RPGs is that collaborative moments.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That definitely, I think, there's value in that because you can also get pieces of backstory that way too and kind of use it as a spotlight tool as well. So for example, I was running a Candela Obscura game, and the creature they were facing put them in a reality where they had to face their darkest fear. So the question that I asked them was, what is the thing that your character is the most afraid of? And they would paint that picture themselves and kind of have their little spotlight moments. It's a great tool to use in that way as well. So because then everybody gets their little like spotlight and everybody feels really good and you keep going. Yeah.
Amazing. I'm going to move us on because I feel like also there's some upcoming moments in the to come emails in this episode where we get to kind of circle back on some of these points a little bit. Not that ever happens. So, but does anyone want to read mailbag number 2?
I'll take mailbag number 2.
Okay.
That sounds good to me. Hello, Kimmy and the wonderful hosts of Happy Jacks. Hey, that's us. Eric from New Jersey here. Hi, Eric from New Jersey. I seem to have a problem. My creative well has seemingly run dry, both for tabletop and LARP. I've been running LARP since the 90s and tabletop GMing since the early 80s. Never had a problem. Stories just sort of come to mind, some pulled from my own life and some pulled from other inspirations. For example, if you replace pregnancy tests with divination, your LARP PCs can become the next Maury Povich. You are not the father. That being said, the well has seemingly run dry. I can't think of a story to save my life. Is this writer's block or burnout or both? I'm not sure. I've never had burnout before, but I would expect it to feel more soul-crushing. This just feels like any ideas? Nope. So being in this predicament, which I think may be some form of writer's block, how does one deal with this? I'm not sure why this is happening right now, but I want it to stop. As always, stay tipsy, stay happy, and stay diverse. Mugs held high. Eric from New Jersey.
Huzzah.
Ooh.
I feel like this is a very poignant question, which is why I picked it. I was like,
oh, yeah.
I'm feeling this right now.
Me too.
Yeah, seriously.
Me 3, actually.
I'm exactly the opposite.
Oh.
I felt this way during the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And now I'm fine. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, I have so many things I want to do and not enough time to do any of them.
I mean,
But
yeah, I said me too, but what I meant was I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to write for my next screenplay, and that is being a struggle. Whereas like all my creative energy is coming out in games, and I think that
Right.
that to your point about the pandemic, but also maybe to the contemporary moment, I feel like stress can be a big cause of this,
Yes.
personal or global,
Hmm.
and um, yeah, following wherever, maybe you're tired of these mediums and like finding another medium is the right thing to do, but just like following your interest, I think is the right thing to do. I think most people have to sort of go through a cycle of living and then creating. If you want to kickstart that creating process, like, go live some life, like sit down and write down a bunch of stories from your life, even if there's ones you've used before. Watch a lot of movies and TV, play a lot of games. Maybe play the solo journaling games we were talking about earlier, because they're a way to sort of like I feel like the thing I need when I get writer's block is outside stimulus. I need other people's ideas to come through so my brain can start like iterating on them in new ways. Solo journaling games I think are great for that in a way that does not require another person to be right there present with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's generally what I end up doing here.
Yeah.
See, interesting, 'cause I would adopt the opposite perspective
Oh,
and be
really?
Interesting.
and like generate ideas from other people, because when I'm in creative burnout, or because for me usually it's a burnout. Usually it's because I'm doing too much and my brain is like, I'm tired, let me sleep, please. And I'm like, oh no, I got to think of this thing. But usually what I'll do is I will go to games that kind of randomize the process,
Mhm.
or let you kind of collaboratively create the process with other players and let them come up with the ideas. So you're not working as hard
Mm.
to write out the story. The story, you're just, all you're doing is connecting concepts together in a cohesive fashion, which for me, like just the way my brain works, that's easier to do than straight up coming up with an original blockbuster idea that will blow all of my players away and will be remembered for years to come. Because that's the other thing too, is we put a lot of pressure on ourselves as GMs to like tell the best story instead of doing our best to tell the story.
Mhm.
And I think that's something important to remember. Like, as long as everyone's having fun and enjoys themselves, you're telling a good story, and it's okay. Even
Yeah.
if it's randomized and you guys just pick some ideas out of thin air and put them together in a weird story shape, it's there. You did it. You had a good time, you
Yeah.
know?
I learned like one of the things that really works for me. I actually learned from my husband. He does like screenwriting, and he is in a like screenwriting group. So they all share ideas, and even if he's not sharing his current thing, if it's like other people sharing that week, they all talk about it. And I like kind of reflected on this, and I realized that all my best design writing and things were always after like a con where I just ran the game and we just talked
Mhm.
about stuff. It was always after I was on a podcast. It was after there's like a game designer online Zoom meeting that I'm not on as often as I should be. It happens like every other Monday, like twice a month. And like after those, even if we don't talk about my games at all, just the idea of breaking down games and talking about games like really like inspires my creativity. Honestly, it's one of the reasons that I moved the podcast to Saturday nights instead of Sunday nights. Because Sunday nights I'm stuck then planning my lesson plans and doing that for the week. And so by the time I'd get into like the residual energy from talking about games for a couple hours and then going and eating pizza, hanging out, and then like getting home, like I would have like no energy to actually put into it. And it's actually like kind of inspired me to like get more writing done, because there's just like kind of what both of you have talked about is like just there's just ideas, and like having just being in the zone of what it's about is so incredibly helpful.
I, I just had Jian Shim on Dice Exploder,
Mm-hmm.
who's a great designer, and we talked about one of the things that we talked about is the importance of boredom and rest to the creative process. That like uh, it's not just sort of like the way that you have ideas is by having experiences and then giving your subconscious mind time to process and think and dwell on those experiences.
Yeah.
And yeah, like talking about things is great, but also like in my experience, I often will go to a convention or whatever, like come here and talk with y'all about this kind of stuff, and then I'm not gonna have the great idea that came from this like on the drive home. I'm gonna have the great idea like 3 days later when I've been thinking about what we talked about.
Yeah.
And I think that happens on sort of a macro scale too, right? If you have a couple of months where you haven't had a lot of ideas, uh, sometimes you just need to be sort of like stewing for a while, and like your brain is working even though you're sort of not actively doing it.
Yeah. And like we were talking about earlier, like real life can suck that away.
Yeah.
Like stress from a pandemic, or like I like to be like I've kind of talked about this too. Like I planned poorly. I started teaching kindergarten this year right after kickstarting Starscape. So it's like while the mechanics of the game were there, like I vastly overestimated how exhausted I would be from teaching kindergarten for the first year. So that's like impacting how quickly I am able to like finalize the text for it. Because it's just one of those things, like even though it's something I'm enjoying and I'm loving, like no matter how tired you are, it does pull away from your creative abilities. So Eric, number one, I would say look at your life right now. Are you
Yes.
stressed about anything? Which is ridiculous to say in January of 2025 in Los Angeles here. But hopefully you're in a better place. I don't know.
New Jersey's not a better place than Los Angeles.
No.
I'll just throw that out there, even if it's on fire. Anyway,
Yeah.
Oh,
Ooh.
take that, New Jersey.
Yeah.
Dave, you were gonna say something.
Yeah. Now he's not. Now he's laughing.
No, I'm laughing because I still have many friends that live in New Jersey, and you're right. No, for me, the pandemic took away all of my boredom time. I know for a lot of people it was the worst factor that they weren't going out and doing stuff, but for me, almost all of my creative thought springs from those moments where I'm forced to be doing something and waiting. And it took away the time that I was waiting to pick up my kids at the end of the day.
Interesting.
It took away the time that I was driving places and
Right.
just thinking to myself in traffic, annoyed. But all of that's where everything springs for me.
Totally.
And as soon as that was eliminated for 2 years, I was like, I have nothing. There is no gas in my tank for coming up with anything. But my solution is also something you touched on. I 100% go through the cycle of, I want to be GMing and I want to be coming up with story ideas and I want to be coming up with stuff. And then as that jug of water depletes, then I go back and I start filling it back up as a player in games.
Yeah.
And as somebody that's sitting at home, watching random shows that I haven't watched, and playing Power Wash Simulator, literally just mindlessly hosing off stuff digitally is the most entertaining game.
It's funny that you say that too. I want to build on that because I was about to say, I was like, I think also consuming other media outside of what you're working on is really helpful. Because if I recall correctly, Kimmy, you actually told me the story of how you built Starscape, and a lot of that was during the pandemic when you got super into these sci-fi shows and you were inspired by that to create the game. And like stuff like that can just happen. Like you can just like consuming other media. Like right now I'm listening to the Magnus Archives podcast because I am running the game and I want to take inspiration from that. And I'm finding inspiration from it in ways that I wasn't expecting. It's actually changed the tone for a fantasy RPG that has nothing to do with it. And the way that I approach that character, because I realized I was making parallels between the characters in the story with my character and another character in the game, and I was like, oh my god, there's similarities here. How do we approach this? But it makes your brain think about things in a different way, or in a way that you may not have thought about before when you consume other media, especially if you're big into patterns like me and you find similarities in like connections in weird ways. Sometimes I compare myself to that guy from It's Always Sunny, where sometimes I have all the little red lines everywhere on the board. But yeah, if your brain works like that, like it's a way to really jumpstart the little idea machine. Also, it's fun to like go out and watch movies and spend time with yourself, as well.
I didn't know. I don't think I knew where that meme came from until just now. Like I've only seen that as a meme and a GIF. Like with the board and all the lines.
During the pandemic, I watched all of Always Sunny, and it came up in an episode, and I was like, It's the guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Leo. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Uh,
Amazing. Yeah. So yeah, self-care and stimulation and like new things for
And
your brain.
boredom.
Yeah. And, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's a reason my authors would just screw off to whole other countries to write.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice to just be able to afford that? Like, I would like to write my game. I'm going to go take a sabbatical in Spain while I write that.
Right? Just off the coast of Portugal, writing your
There you
TTRPG.
go.
Like.
Yeah, there you go. There's my life. Yeah, right.
Well, all you have to do is write 5 or 6 New York Times bestselling novels.
Yep.
Oh, there we go.
And then you can go do that.
No problem.
You
See?
too can go off to Spain
It's
and live the
step
life of your
1.
dreams.
Step 2 is all question marks.
Yeah.
And
No,
then step
steps-
3
step-
is the profit.
Steps 1 through 5 are write a New York Times bestselling novel.
Again and again and again.
Yeah,
and when
yeah.
you get to 6, it's a little nebulous, but then you'll find your way.
No problem.
Transition into TTRPGs.
Okay. Fantastic.
Yeah.
No problem. All right. Well, I have my plan now. So let's go to mailbag number 3 from the archive. I can read this? Or...
Go for it.
Okay. Hey there, Happy Jackers. I was raised in a non-gaming household, and I don't play anything more intense than bingo until... Oh, and I didn't play anything more intense than bingo until I got to college. Recently, my mom, a woman in her 70s, told me about a couple's night she and my dad attended at their local church that was a murder mystery dinner party. I loved those.
Yeah.
It was like the thing when I was in high school for us, like theater kids. Like,
Yes.
yes. They had a great time solving the murder, and I mentioned to my mom that this was similar to the games that my friends and I play all the time. And maybe next time I visit, we can play a game together. She seemed amicable to the idea, but now I'm stumped. What system can I use for a pair of non-gamers that I see a few times a year, where I'm definitely the odd duck in the family? I might be able to include a few more family members, but none of them are gamers. My parents like mysteries. My mom was a math teacher, and my dad was a supply officer in the Navy for almost 30 years. My mom also enjoys sports and gardening, while my dad likes carpentry and Star Trek. Oh, that's important. My initial thought is something like Fiasco, but I am not sure a game where no one wins will be quite to their liking, especially for their first time out. What suggestions do you have for my baby boomer parents who struggle with finding common ground with their nerdy daughter, but are trying? Thanks for everything, Jen.
Oh.
I did this.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Uh-oh.
I had a friend who, so my partner's best friend wanted to get her mother a Christmas present of Sam runs a game for her mother. And so the mother in question got together like 3 other like empty nester moms from the neighborhood and asked me to run a game for them. And I ended up running Monster of the Week. I gave them a few options though. I feel like that's a good strategy here. Is what are you going to be excited about?
Yeah.
Well, don't overwhelm them with choice like we did previously on the first question. But like, try to think of 3 ideas that they might like and then sort of pitch them those things. And they're not going to care about mechanics at all. They're only going to care about the flavor. I think also GM'd games are probably better for this than GM-less ones because having you there as like an authority figure to help guide people through it is going to be really strong for this kind of thing. And Dave is getting up to go. I was going to say, I think to grab an example game to bring in. That's what I'm expecting. But,
I actually would lean towards the one-pagers as well. And Grant, how it's great for this Honey Heist, Lasers and Feelings. Also because Lasers and Feelings is a single die. You don't have to worry about anything outside of that. Honey Heist, very easy. Beer and pretzels. You build your bears, you go heist some honey, and that's that. Also, another couple of my favorites, Raccoon Sky Pirates.
yeah,
and
that's good.
The Excellence.
Yeah.
Mostly because the way the system works is you hit the number, you do the thing. You don't hit the number, you don't do the thing.
Yeah.
Very, very easy mechanics to follow. And they're both very silly games. And I find that with new people, introducing them to the silly and the fun aspects is a great way to get them into the hobby.
Yeah. I have found that the one pagers can be tough for new groups because there's just so little structure to them, and
Yeah.
you have to do so much
Right.
work like filling those in. But like if you're really comfortable doing that work, as I think like most of us are, like I think
Yeah.
that can be a great option. I want to shout out a game on Zine Quest right now called Mission Impossible,
Yeah.
PAW.
Yes.
That where you are 3 raccoons in a trench coat doing super spy stuff.
Yeah.
Which is very cute and like also comes in a box that is full of like classic board game style kind of components. And I think that is something that also feels very welcoming to people who are less familiar with role-playing games, is like components that feel like something they are more familiar with, like a board game. So I don't know exactly where that leaves me in terms of examples, but I mean, Honey Heist is a great one that people tend to love. I think you're dead on about silly games being a great choice.
I feel like, I mean, and this is so personal, but I feel like A Quiet Year is a good game for this too, because you have A Quiet Year, you're basically like building a town and a backstory, and there's a little bit less of being a character, like you know. But it sounds like if they really enjoyed like the mystery theater, they might really be into the character thing,
Yeah.
which, you know, that would be great. But the thing I like about a Quiet Year is like the first step introduction is, especially for someone who might be, you know, a career Navy person in 30 years who may not want to be super silly. It gives them sort of like that disconnect from like embodying someone to describing things.
100%.
So that might be something that might be a little safer fit for a first step. Although Honey Heist is fantastic, and it's such a simple concept that everyone like kind of gloms on too easily. Like, you are a bear, you are stealing honey. Like, okay, we got it.
Yeah.
But something like that gives them a little bit of permission to step back and like slowly warm into it might be a good choice.
Yeah.
Companion's Tale is a good one for that too. It comes in a box. It's hard to get, so I don't know if you can get that one. But that was one of the first games that I played that kind of transitioned me from more traditional, like TTRPGs to more like story creative games. I really loved that one too.
Yeah.
I forgot how remiss of me. If you're into the murder mystery aspect, it would be more of a challenge. It's a little bit more in the intermediate tier, I think, for new gamers. But Brindlewood Bay,
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
like we're all there. I was like,
I
you
think
know,
it's pretty easy to strip away a lot of the more complicated parts of Brindlewood Bay too. You can just sort of like, don't even give them the like day move and night move sheet. Just sort of like handle that yourself behind the scenes. And like, there's a lot of ways where you can take that premise, which it sounds like your parents would probably love. You know, skip all the Cthulhu stuff. Just do like one mystery at a haunted house or whatever, and like, and try to like slim it down for them. I think that'd be a great choice.
Yeah. Burt ran the Golden Girls version of
Yeah.
that like recently. It was super fun.
I would say that's the secret in my mind is what you guys just landed on, is if you're going to run a game for people that aren't gamers, the best example of this ever was the much missed Mook at our local conventions.
Oh.
He was a god of playing GURPS, right? Arguably one of the most complicated game systems to figure out and to get people to play. But he would literally give you a character sheet that was inside a clear plastic folder. And he would put it face up one direction, and the one page that he gave you had all the information you needed to play. And you would just sit there and say, okay, I want to do this. I want to do that. And he would use his GURPS brain to work the magic clockworks of the system and just say, okay, roll your 3d6, and then I will tell you what happens. And he never told you, like, add this bonus, add that bonus. It was all just running in his mind, and he kept all of that behind the GM curtain.
Yeah.
Right? And then if people were interested, he would say, okay, flip your character sheet over the other side. Here's a more detailed and more mechanically oriented character sheet for you, if you're into that. And then, if you feel like you're ready to really dive in here and get up to your neck in mechanics, open the folder And now you have like a 4-page character sheet with all the mechanics, and it's all in there. If you want to get all the way up to your elbows in oil and figure out how this game works, do it that way. And like, I saw him running games for people repeatedly that had never played GURPS. I saw him run a game once for people, 2 of the people at the table had never played any RPG before, and GURPS was their first experience thanks to him.
Yeah.
And they had a blast.
Yeah.
They were all the way in and thought it was the coolest thing ever, and we were playing essentially through sort of the storyline of The Warriors, the movie. And so they were just like, yeah, okay, we're like in a New York with a bunch of weird gangs, and we got to figure out how to get across town. Like, all right, I'm in. And they were just sold on the premise and ready to go. They signed up just because they liked the movie, and we're like, all right, let's do this. And yeah.
He knew the mechanics so well. He ran GURPS like a story game.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing to watch and experience. Like knowing the reputation of GURPS and having like dabbled in it slightly before he ran a campaign for us, it was just magical and baffling when you're like, oh, okay, you roll and tell him what he did. Oh, you absolutely it was amazing. So yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said for running a system that you are comfortable with, because that comfort will transfer to the whole game, and you will be able to run a better experience because you're not going to be stressed out and worrying about remembering the rules and mechanics yourself.
To add to all that, I think pre-generated characters are really helpful if the game doesn't
I was
come with you.
literally right there with you.
Yeah.
Because and that is how I learned to play the Wild Sea for the first time.
Yeah.
They brought a bunch of pre-generated characters, and that was how we built our characters, and we were able to figure out, oh, that's what pips do. That's how we build our dice pools. Because it was my first time playing, and up to that point, I think it was also my first time playing a Forged in Darkness game as well. So I was still new to the idea of dice pools and how to build them and what things do, and that was how I learned. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a great way to learn.
Yeah.
You know.
My other shockingly good experience with people at the table that had never even heard of tabletop RPGs was at the Strategicon one year. A friend was running based on Dread game. So he showed up, he had 6 Jenga towers that he set up on a different table so we wouldn't bump the table where we were sitting. And essentially his whole storyline was essentially like all of us got together and ended up going to a house that we rented on Airbnb, and we got there to have a cool weekend with friends, and we just mysteriously fall asleep at the same time, and then we wake up and we're in the house, and it's like Saw, like the whole idea is, and our characters, he's like, your character is you, whatever you have in your pockets minus your cell phone is your inventory. That's it. That's what you've got to figure this out. And
I have a very important question. Does my purse count?
If you had it with you, yes.
Okay, I'm set for life. It's fine. I can handle the situation.
But then we just started playing, and it was every time you did something that might be risky, he would go, okay, over to your Jenga tower and do it. And then if every time you did it, then something would happen. Like if you failed, it wasn't instant death. It was something happened to you.
Right.
And so like I was one of the first people that tried something, and I was like, well, there's a tall window in this cement room we're in. I'm going to see, like, can somebody help me get a boost? And I'm going to reach up there and grab and pull myself up to see if I can look out the window, at least see where we are. And I reach up and he goes, well, unfortunately, there's a bunch of like broken glass on that ledge, and you've now cut up your fingers.
Oh.
So then he reaches in his bag and he pulls out a roll of medical tape and he goes, tape all your fingers together.
Oh my gosh.
I was
So
like,
then
he
I
pulls
go
out
to-
a bunch of broken glass and is like,
He's like,
ready?
yeah,
How dedicated
let's
are
do
you
this.
to this game, Dave?
So then, I'm sitting there with all 4 of my fingers taped together on both hands, and now I got to go do Jenga. Okay. That's more difficult. And then
Yeah.
eventually I ended up having a wounded leg. So then he's like, okay, you have to do this on one leg and go over there and do your Jenga while you're on one leg. Or somebody ended up with an eye that got poked out. So he pulled out an eye patch and gave it to him to put over their one eye. And it was just through the game. That was the whole thing. And I feel like, and the shocking part was 2 of the players that sat down at this game were just a random couple from Arizona that were staying in the hotel before their flight the
Oh my
next day.
God.
And they had wandered down and were like, what in the hell's going on down here?
Sometimes it's very fun.
And they were just like, what is all this? What are you guys doing down here? And we're like, well, we're going to play a game. If you want to sit down and play a game, let's go. And so she kind of asked some questions because it was a couple. And she goes, well, okay. And he kind of explained like, okay, this might have a little bit of horror aspects to what we're talking about. This was at midnight.
Oh, wow.
And she was just totally like, yeah, okay, great. And the husband's like, all right, why not? Let's do this. And they were all the way in, like just right away. And they understood the premise and they understood the mechanics because it's a physical object and
Yeah,
it worked out great.
props like that and that little bit of like larpiness almost that you
Yeah.
also get at a murder mystery party. I feel like go like really far for a certain kind of person who's sort of like curious but skeptical.
Yeah.
Like the props are a great tool.
Yeah, I think that story might have actually changed my answer. Like, maybe instead of going for a TTRPG, you go for like a parlor LARP.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh,
something
yeah.
that's like more, like has a little bit more mechanics or I guess different mechanics, like more improv type stuff than you would for a murder mystery box, but very similar in that same vein. If they were already comfortable with the murder mystery, like a parlor LARP is a very parallel experience to that.
Yeah.
That might be something that's like one step closer to TTRPGs, but not quite all the way. And you can just slowly, over the next few years, get them closer and closer to just
Yeah.
sitting at a table with dice.
Basically.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think like a LARP might be really fun to do because there's a lot of easy murder mystery LARPs too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like
Get
that,
Ghost
so-
Court in there or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God, Ghost Court. I love that one. Oh, man. Yeah, such a good one. Very fun. And honestly, yeah, that might not be a terrible one to start with.
Yeah.
Last time I played was a couple weeks ago at a party, and it was like a library, and it was very fun. It gets wacky very quickly, and it's very enjoyable, especially at parties like that because we kept rotating in and out,
Yep.
and we kept
Yep.
doing the same stuff.
Ghost Court is a really good like 8-person game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There was like 25 of us.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you'd start with that, but we do like small groups, and then people would be watching. And
Yeah,
then we'd
yeah,
rotate
yeah.
it, so.
And then, like it's 15 people standing around at a party having a conversation, but then they can also jump into the Ghost Court if they want to. Like,
Exactly.
Oh, that's great.
And it was literally a party for the Story Games meetup. So
Yeah,
it's like, okay. Very fun. Cool. So yeah, Jen, I know we answered the question a long time ago. I actually am super curious what we said in 2019.
Yeah, go back and it'll be a totally contradictory information.
Totally different games, I'm sure. I mean, a lot of the games we suggested tonight didn't even exist in
Yeah.
2019.
Yeah.
So
That's
there you
true.
go. So yeah, hopefully it went well, and hopefully your boomer parents are huge gamer nerds now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I want to play with your boomer parents.
Yeah,
Give
absolutely.
them my email. Tell them to DM me
Yeah, damn
from
it.
across the bar.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for season 35, episode 4 of the Happy Jacks RPG podcast. Please support our amazing indie designer of the month, Sam Dunwell.
That's me.
Where can they find you again?
They can find me at diceexploder.com on Blue Sky, at diceexploder.com on the internet. sdunwell.ish.io is where my games are, and We Three Shall Meet Again is the Witches game that we talked about at the top of the show. Again, sdunwell.itch.io.
Yeah.
Dice Exploder podcasts, those are the things.
Yeah. Excellent podcast.
Wherever podcasts are sold.
Yes, absolutely. And honestly, one of the podcasts I listened to when we were talking about earlier about when I like get stumped on writing and need like inspiration, that's one of the podcasts that I listen to for like the minutia of like game design. And it gets me thinking on other stuff. I just love it.
John Harper does that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you to our chat mod, James V, and to our amazing Patreons who keep us ad-free and independent. You can join their amazing ranks at happyjacks.org/Patreon. FYI Patreon, we're finally moving to the new Patreon subscription model. They gave us the dates of March 12th through the 14th. Somewhere in there is when the change will occur. If you want more information on that, go check out the post I just made on our Patreon page. My name is Kimmy. You can find me at Golden Lasso Girl on Blue Sky, and that's kind of it right now. Or you can find me at goldenlassogames.com or happyjacks.org, or any Happy Jack stuff is always me too. So yeah, anything. Sam, you just did yourself, but why don't you just say your name again and stuff?
Sam Dunawall, Dice Exploder. Google it.
Fantastic.
And I'm Dave. You'll mostly find me here more than anywhere else on the internet, but also occasionally at CA Sith Lord on Twitch or Blue Sky. And I usually stream something random. I've been streaming for about an hour as like a pre-game before the Mouse Ritter game here. Currently, the Indiana Jones and the Great Circle game, because I thought it was a great time to go around and punch fascists. So let's go. Woo! Tuesday evenings, usually about 6-ish.
Always a favorite pastime.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I'm Vixie Bell. I've been your friendly neighborhood person here at the Happy Jacks table. And yeah, I like to hang out here in Happy Jacks. You might find me on a few games. I'm excited to be at Strategicon next week. And you can also find me over at the Pocket Dragon Pub, where I do actual plays. And sometimes I GM them too, occasionally, maybe once or twice.
So check out, we'll be at OrcCon February 14th to the 17th. Also, our next game days in the Discord is happening March 29th. So a bunch of people are running a bunch of different games. If you want to run a game or play a game, free community play day, just join the Discord. And that one's coming up in March. So the one after that will be in May. We do it every other month. Lots of fun. Very cool, happy community. So thank you all so much, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
There once was a ship that put to sea, and the name of the ship was the Billy of Tea. The winds blew up her bow, dipped down, oh blow, my bully boys blow. Soon may the Wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. She had not been 2 weeks from shore when down on her a right whale bore. The captain called all hands and swore he'd take that whale in tow. Soon may the Wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. Before the boat had hit the water, the whale's tail came up and caught her. All hands to the side, harpooned and fought her when she dived down low. Soon may the Wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. No line was caught, the whale was freed. The captain's mind was not of greed, but he belonged to the Wellerman's creed. He took that ship in tow. Soon may the Wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. For 40 days or even more, the line went slack, then tight once more. All boats were lost, there were only 4, but still that whale did go. Soon may the Wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. As far as I've heard, the fight's still on, the line's not cut, and the whale's not gone. The Wellerman makes his regular call to encourage captain, crew, and all. Soon may the Wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. Soon may the Wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go.